Hello, this is Cho of the Shiny Colors Discord, and welcome to another episode of the Shiny Review. Apologies for this one being a little late. Hopefully there's still some time for you to use this video as a means to decide on whether or not you want to pull on the new banner. The banner features SSR2 Asahi, as well as the limited support SSR Mei, and our event card is a support SSR Fuyuko. It is worth noting that this banner does feature double rates, so a 10% SSR rate every time you pull. Might get very lucky in your first couple pulls, might find yourself with a lot of new resources. So if you are a newer player, this is definitely one of the big banners to pull on. Or if you're just looking to fill out the rest of your roster, this can also be a great banner to spend some gems on. Getting into it first with Asahi. Our first limited Stray Light P-SSR has arrived with more than enough power to put the unit back on the map. Sacrificing the single target deleting power of Asahi 1, Asahi 2 opts for AoE appeals on both primary and link appeal, resulting in obscene amounts of damage across the board through the classic Stray Light buff gimmick. Asahi packs all the modern bells and whistles of limited SSRs, along with a potential visual 6.0 AoE appeal, and the most lenient version of their gimmick yet. Even at 0-star, players can find themselves building an Asahi with at least 600 visual by herself, or even more depending on your support lineup. She's a force to be reckoned with. Her roles are Center, Attack All, Memory Boost, as well as Nuker. Her initial skill is a visual 2.5 appeal that attacks all judges and links into a visual 0.4 to 2.0 appeal that attacks all judges, but this ability scales on how many active visual buffs you have. So if you have 4 active visual buffs, you will reach maximum damage, as it is 0.4 per active visual buff. At max, this becomes a visual 4.0 appeal that attacks all judges and links into another visual 0.4 to 2.0 appeal that attacks all judges and requires you to remove all active vocal and dance buffs. It is worth noting that because this skill scales on both vocal and dance active buffs, you only need a combination of the two in order to reach the maximum of 4. So you could have 1 vocal buff, 3 dance buffs, 2 vocal, 2 dance. Makes it much easier to use than getting 4 buffs of a single stat. Her 1-star passive is a visual 40% up as well as memory gauge 5% boost if your team includes Asahi, has a 30% chance to activate 3 times. Her 2-star passive is an upgrade, a visual 60% up and memory 10% up if your team includes Asahi, 30% chance to activate 3 times. At 3 stars, she has 2 separate uncaps. The first is a visual 150 and the second is a mental 100. And her memory appeal at max applies a vocal dance visual 10% buff for 10 turns, then links into 2 separate attacks. The first is a visual 0.5 to 2.5 appeal that removes vocal and dance active buffs, and then a visual 0.7 to 3.5 appeal that removes visual buffs. Needless to say, this card is incredibly strong, and the fact that her AoE appeals have 0 downsides to them makes him honestly a much better visual AoE unit than Natsuha 3. For recommended supports, build up Asahi's visual stat as much as possible, utilizing the latest Mei alongside your Fuyuko of choice. Including the latest Amana or Mamimi for further visual room support can have powerful results. Ideally, you may also choose to grab an appeal that can help supply active buffs, if you don't end up getting Asahi to 4-star. So some of the cards we include here are the new Fuyuko, as well as the previous Fuyuko, the new Mei, SR Meguru for damage amp, Tenka for some potential bonuses, as well as some SP mastery because you're definitely going to need it. For recommended teammates, allow your teammates to build up active buffs for Asahi, then go to town. If you get in a lucky situation where Mei support passives go off along with a full setup of 4 active buffs for each type, Asahi will almost certainly wipe out every judge in one attack. For alternates, you can consider all active buffs to assist in damage. So we of course include Mei 1 and Fuyuko 1, you could choose to run Mei 2 as well, though she does sort of clash with this team's idea, and also lacks a visual appeal to truly synergize. But the realistic thing about this Asahi is that you can very easily build it in a mixed sort of way, sort of like how Hiyori 1 used to be back in the day. Otherwise, just pick your best buffers, so you could choose like Choco 1, could technically choose Choco 3 if you wanted to, but isn't necessarily the greatest card for it, but it's an option. You also have Rinzai 3 and Rinzai 4, who are great buffers for multiple reasons, Natsuha 1 for visual buffs across the board, as well as Kiriko for visual buffs. You could even choose to include the SR Bebop Kogane for another visual buff as an option. Overall, Asahi as a center gets somewhere between an SS Plus and a Triple S. The current Grade Fest technically elevates Asahi to Triple S, but even without the free buffs, this memory appeal is incredibly strong. They managed to make a Stray Light center that is a legitimate threat on the field, and can really stand well if you have the deck to support it. While I don't think it is necessarily the most consistent memory appeal in the game, it is certainly extremely scary once you have all the conditions set. As a unit, double S. It is very hard to not grade AoE well, especially given that there's zero downsides to using Asahi. You're always guaranteed her 1-star or 2-star buffs, her appeals don't carry a weakness, and the base damage for both appeals is very good all around. If you plan on running any 3-piece visual teams, consider rolling for Asahi if you can afford to. Honestly, this card might even be SS Plus or Triple S as a unit, so yeah, really good card if you haven't pulled yet. Next we have Mei. Limited Mei is an incredibly powerful addition to visual teams, and might I say, much like the limited Fuyuko, in a lot of ways this Mei seems very overtuned. She rocks a wide assortment of useful visual mastery skills, including the now exclusive Visual Mastery Limit. She'll no doubt be useful to most players looking to improve their visual lineup, and works extremely well in tandem with cards like Hot Pot Bamimi or the initial Fuyuko support. She has 7 skills: Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, as well as Stamina support, and her 3 unique masteries are Unit Mastery Visual, which reaches plus 12 at level 70, Visual Mastery Visual Limit, which reaches plus 5 at 75, and Visual Mastery Stamina, which reaches 5 at 75. And her TFD idea is Appeal. As for the rest of Mei's kit, at 1 star she has a visual 50% up as long as you have an active vocal buff, 10% chance to activate 3 times. Her 2-star passive is a visual 75% up if you have an active visual buff, 10% chance to activate 3 times. Her 3-star uncap is a plus 100 to visual, and her 4-star appeal is a visual 3.0 that applies 2 separate buffs. The first is a vocal visual 10% buff for 5 turns, and the second is a vocal visual 5% up for 10 turns. So, just with this appeal alone, you immediately get 2 of the 4 visual buffs and 2 of the 4 vocal buffs that you need for Asahi. Her support appeal also applies buffs and scales. At level 60, it's a visual 3.0 that applies a vocal dance visual 5% buff for 3 turns. At level 80, the visual 3.0 stays, but the buff is increased to 25% for 3 turns. Mei gets somewhere between S+ and SS. I think it's very fair to say this Mei card could become extremely relevant to visual teams as time progresses. The unit mastery is huge for Stray Light, and the stamina support combined with visual stamina mastery could lead to infinite visual rooms just by herself. Gaining extra visual uncap is icing on the cake of a complete package deal. She needs to be partnered with some SP mastery, but that's very doable in the current state of the game. Lastly, we have our event SSR Fuyuko. The easiest way to look at this Fuyuko is that she is a watered-down version of Limited Mei. Instead of using unit mastery for visual, she opts for the standard room mastery, and has a very similar assortment of comparable skills, but they're weaker in value, and a nearly identical appeal when maxed out. She's a great card for newer accounts. Her only unique mastery is a Visual Mastery Visual, which reaches plus 8 at 75, and the rest of her skills include Idol's Bond, Promise Recovery, Rest Boost, as well as Stamina support, and her TFD idea is Dance. For Fuyuko's abilities, at 1 star she has a visual 18% up if you have an active visual buff, 30% chance to activate once. Her 2 star is a visual 35% up if you have an active vocal buff, 30% chance to activate once. Her 3-star uncap is a plus 50 to visual, and her 4-star appeal is a visual 2.5 that applies a vocal visual 10% buff for 5 turns. Fuyuko earns an A-. She's definitely meant to be ran alongside the new Mei, and is a great complement for SSR2 Asahi. Her passives are very good for a free card, and her appeal is still good if you can't quite max out other similar appeals. Her masteries are mostly standard, and plus 8 is perfectly okay for a card like this. Having a dance idea also greatly helps TFD building for visual teams. Make sure to grab all the copies from the event before time runs out. And that's going to be it for the video today. Thank you so much as always for watching. Next time we'll be back to talk about whatever banner comes next, whether that be a rerun or a new one. We also have some ideas cooking about some new videos, potentially even a discussion on what cards are good for beginners. So, till next time, I've been Cho. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.